I am about to share 6 psychological cheat codes, the 6 principles of persuasion that can be used in sales, marketing, negotiation, and to expand your influence in your personal life. Sharing these cheat codes with you feels unethical because oftentimes they have been used. Sorry, I would rather say exploited by rich and influential people to grow their business, increase their wealth, expand their influence, and to manipulate people into doing what they want. Based on the years of investigative research by American psychologist Dr. Robert Cialdini, these principles of influence can be defined as the psychological triggers that can influence human decisions almost automatically. His books on the psychology of influence have sold over 5 million copies in 41 languages. Cheat code number 1. Reciprocity, creating the cycle of goodwill. This principle is based on the psychological fact that people feel obligated to pay back gifts and favors. In society, we feel obligated to pay back what we receive from others. In other words, if someone does you a favor, you are more likely to return it to him. Now, how can you use the principle of reciprocity to expand your influence and create a cycle of goodwill? Provide value to people for free to create a good first impression and to build trust. For example, if you are a content creator like me, you can offer valuable content, resources, or advice for free. And once you establish yourself as an expert or helpful individual in your field, you can gently take the next step towards generating revenue from your services. In this way, the people who have been using your free services would feel much more comfortable doing business with you. If you have a product-based startup, offer free trials or samples. This will allow your potential customers to experience the value of your product firsthand and will create a sense of reciprocity, an obligation to buy from you, which will increase the likelihood of future purchases. Another way to attract attention, gain exposure, and increase brand recognition is to host contests and giveaways. They encourage participation and engagement from your potential customers. Applying the principle of reciprocity in personal life to expand your influence. Engage in acts of kindness towards others without expecting anything in return. Offer help, support, or compliments to friends, family, or even strangers. Your kindness can inspire reciprocity and foster a more harmonious and supportive environment. If you want to expand your network and connections, look for opportunities to help others without expecting immediate returns. Connect people who could benefit from knowing each other or share valuable resources and insights. Such acts of generosity can lead to mutually beneficial connections and opportunities in the future. Cheat code number 2. Commitment and consistency. This principle of influence is based on the psychological fact that when people make a public commitment, they feel pressure to appear consistent with it. Unfortunately, this human tendency can lead us down the path of foolish consistency. If someone can make us do a small action, then we will be more likely to do larger actions consistent with it in the future. Let me explain. In 1960s, psychologists Friedman and Fraser conducted one study that found if people agreed to put a small 3-inch drive carefully sticker in their home window, then 2 weeks later they were 4 times more likely to agree to put a large sign with the same message in their front lawn. Agreeing with the small request made them feel an obligation to agree to the much larger request 2 weeks later. This principle of influence is all about exploiting our natural inclination to stay true to our past commitments and be consistent with our words and actions. Once we make a choice or take a stand on something, we tend to stick with it to maintain a sense of personal integrity and credibility. Advertisers and marketers often use this principle to influence our behavior. For example, they might ask you to make a small commitment like signing up for a newsletter and then gradually increase the level of commitment, leading you to make bigger decisions or purchases. The key is that once you commit to something, you feel compelled to remain consistent with that commitment. In your personal life, you can use this principle in 2 ways. Firstly, to make sure you follow through with your goals by publicly declaring your intentions. If you publicly express your commitment, you create a sense of accountability and increase the likelihood of following through. If you manage to find an accountability partner, that's even better. Find someone who will help you stay consistent by constantly bugging you about your work and who will hold you to your word. The second way is to use this principle to get people to help you with your goals. If you want someone's help or a favor, start by asking a small favor first and then ask for the big one. In this way, people will feel much more comfortable helping you. If you start by asking a big favor first, people will say no and you will miss the opportunity of establishing a valuable social connection. Cheat code number 3. Social proof. Exploiting the confirmation bias and group thinking. Based on people's tendency to copy the actions of other people, this principle of influence states that when we are uncertain or unsure about something, we often assume that the actions or choices of others are correct. If you are thinking about buying something and are unsure about it, you naturally tend to seek recommendations from others, your friends or someone whom you consider an expert in that field. You rely on their experiences to make your decision. This psychological phenomenon occurs because we naturally seek validation and reassurance from the behavior and opinions of others. Even on social media, people are more likely to follow you or buy your product if they see their friends doing the same. You can leverage this tendency of people to grow your business by carefully creating a marketing strategy that focuses on building social proof. Displaying customer reviews and feedbacks, working with influencers, and partnering with experts in your industry are a few proven ways to build social proof. When it comes to applying the principle of social proof in your personal life, keep in mind that as more and more people endorse you, the more you can build authority and trust among people. You don't need to have a lot of friends, you just need a few right ones. Be socially selective. Cheat code number 4. The principle of scarcity. Making people compete for scarce resources. This principle is based on our tendency to value things that are perceived as rare or in limited supply. We want things more when they are harder to get. Cialdini explains how scarcity can be employed as a persuasive tool to create a sense of urgency in your customers and make them buy from you. Make your product seem like a rare and limited edition and more people will compete to buy it. This means that to increase interest in your product or service, you may benefit from reducing its availability or at least creating a sense of scarcity. For example, online sales platforms for hotels and airplanes commonly say things like only 5 seats left at this price. They do this to create a sense of scarcity as well as to add time pressure, which is closely related. Let's assume that you are in the business of selling used cars. Now, instead of calling interested customers to have a look at the car at different times, if you ask all of them to come at once at one particular time, here is what would happen. They will feel pressure to buy that car as soon as they see other interested customers, because in their mind they will perceive it as limited supply. All of them will start competing with each other to get that car because they would not want to miss that opportunity. You can literally use this technique in selling anything. The principle of scarcity can be effective in personal life as well. You see, generally, people will tell you to be available to your friends and family all the time. But being available all the time has a serious downside. If you are available all the time, people will eventually stop valuing you and your time. But if you create a sense of scarcity around your own availability, instead of taking you for granted, people will value you and your time more. However, you should strike the right balance if you want this strategy to work effectively in your favor. Cheat code number 5. The principle of authority, based on our tendency to follow the advice of the people in positions of authority. As children, a lot of our knowledge about the world comes from authority figures such as parents and teachers. For example, if a child wanders up to a very hot cooktop, the parent will warn her not to touch the stove. The child trusts the adult's reasoning skills and doesn't burn her hand. Since our childhood, we have been conditioned to trust the reasoning of authority figures. We see the principle of authority in action in many walks of life. For instance, dentists in white coats are used to sell us toothpaste, and bodybuilders and athletes are used to sell us health supplements. In your life, if you promote your own brilliance and authority, people will hardly take you seriously. But if others do it, suddenly it becomes easy for you to build authority. Interestingly, it almost doesn't matter who the other person is. Even if the person promoting you is known to benefit personally from doing so, their words of praise still increase your influence and ability to persuade. If you are just starting out in your career or business, instead of just asking others to recommend you or your product, you should start recommending others when appropriate so that they feel a social obligation to recommend you in return. In this way, you combine the principle of reciprocity with the principle of authority to expand your influence. Cheat code number 6. Liking. Have you ever asked someone for a favor? Maybe you needed a ride somewhere or help with some family stuff. In most cases, people would respond positively to your request only if they like you. That's because people are more likely to comply with requests from individuals they like or admire. Nearly every advertisement you see will feature individuals that appeal to the product's target market. The more the consumer can relate to that person, the more they like them, the more likely they are to be influenced by them. We all have a common tendency to like the people that share our interests and views. We like people that think like us. Look at social media, it is full of different groups of like-minded people. You can exploit this natural tendency of people to grow your business by creating social spaces where your target customers can interact and exchange opinions. Gather all the like-minded people who are interested in your product and give them a platform to interact. People love it when they can share their views and opinions. It makes them feel important. This will help you build customer loyalty and increase customer engagement. In your personal life, the liking principle can do wonders if you figure out a way to get people to like you instantly. And here's the most practical and psychologically tested way to do it. As I already told you, people like people who share their interests and views. Now you just have to figure out what their interests are, what they care about the most, and what they like about themselves. Once you figure it out, compliment them on that. If someone is interested in fashion and clothes, compliment him on his fashion sense. If someone is a health freak, compliment his physique. This can be so powerful that no matter where you go, you will make a lot of friends. Just do one thing. If you go to any new place and want to make friends, avoid imposing your own views and avoid giving unsolicited advice. People hate that. Once you make friends, then you can slowly assert yourself. But to do that, people must like you first. Keep in mind, when trying to persuade someone, it pays to focus on building rapport and developing a relationship. Get on their wavelength and try to find common interest. When people like you, they are more likely to take your request seriously. Watch episode number 5 of the Wisdom Podcast on the 7 best books that are more useful than having a business degree. That's all for today's episode. Do you want to be a pro at communication skills in just 90 days? Watch episode number 3. And if you want to retire early and achieve financial freedom, watch episode number 1 of the Wisdom Podcast. Are you a curious individual and a profound independent thinker seeking answers to vital questions about personal growth, business, and personal finance? Join me on this podcast and together we will discover secrets to making astronomical progress in life. On this podcast, I ask questions to the world's most influential books on finance, business, and personal growth and receive personalized guidance based on the knowledge and wisdom contained within their pages. Join me on this journey as we explore the magic of books that can speak.